The clinking of wine glasses sounded like tiny mocking bells. I sat silently at the polished mahogany table of Aria, a restaurant so exclusive you couldn't find the price on the menu. If you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. And I, Mark, a high school history teacher, definitely couldn't afford it. But this wasn't my treat. This was Jessica's night, a celebration of her landing a new, vague, but apparently lucrative consulting gig, surrounded by her new, equally vague and lucrative friends. "Honestly, I don't know how you do it, Mark," said Chloe, a woman with diamonds in her ears and ice in her veins. She took a delicate sip of her Chardonnay. "Living on a teacher salary in this city, it must be a constant struggle." I offered a tight-lipped smile. "We manage." Jessica, my wife of 8 years, let out a tinkling laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, he manages," she parroted, waving her hand dismissively. Her new diamond bracelet, a gift she'd claimed to have bought for herself, caught the light and sent a shard of brilliance stabbing into my eye. "He manages to grade papers while I'm closing deals. He manages to budget for groceries while I'm booking flights to Milan. It's adorable, really, like having a pet project." The other two women at the table, Sarah and Megan, giggled. Sarah, whose husband Alex was conveniently away on business, looked at me with a pity that felt worse than the scorn. I focused on the intricate pattern of my bread plate, tracing the gilded edges with my gaze. The humiliation was a physical thing, a heavy cloak settling over my shoulders. But beneath it, a cold, hard resolve was solidifying. I just smiled. That smile seemed to unnerve Jessica more than any angry retort would have. "What?" she snapped, her voice sharp. "What's so funny?" "Nothing, honey," I said, my voice even. "I'm just proud of you. You've built this amazing new life for yourself." The subtext hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A life that doesn't include me. She narrowed her eyes, searching my face for a crack, but found none. I had spent the last 6 months carefully building this placid facade, brick by painful brick. It hadn't always been like this. I remembered the early days, living in our small starter apartment, laughing as we tried to assemble flat-pack furniture with confusing instructions. Jessica was a junior graphic designer then, full of fire and passion for her art. We didn't have much, but we had each other. My steady teacher salary was our foundation. It paid the bills, it kept us secure, and she'd called me her rock. We talked about having kids, about buying a small house with a yard, about a future built on love and mutual respect, not on the brand of our watches. The change was gradual. It started when she joined a new, high-powered marketing firm. Suddenly, her colleagues were all driving German cars and vacationing in the Maldives. Our life, once cozy and sufficient, became a source of embarrassment for her.
My salary, once our rock, became her anchor. The late nights began, attributed to demanding projects. The hushed phone calls were for difficult clients. The new clothes, bags, and jewelry were justified as necessary for maintaining an image. Then came Alex. He was a name that started popping up with increasing frequency. A wealthy investor in one of her projects. He was brilliant, charming, and a mentor, she'd said. I saw the texts on her phone one night when she left it on the nightstand. "Can't stop thinking about last night," one read. Her reply, "Me neither. Mark is so clueless." Clueless. The word echoed in my mind for days. It was a brand seared into my soul. I wasn't clueless, I was in love. I had been willfully blind because the truth was a chasm I was terrified to look into. But that text message pushed me over the edge. I didn't confront her. What was the point? She would lie, gaslight me, and call me insecure. Instead, I did something I never thought I would do. I hired a private investigator. Mr. Davies was a quiet, unassuming man who delivered his findings in a plain manila envelope 2 weeks later. The photos were grainy but undeniable. Jessica and Alex, a handsome man with a predator smile, leaving a boutique hotel. Jessica and Alex, kissing in his convertible. Jessica and Alex, her head on his shoulder, looking at a jewelry display. The diamond bracelet she was wearing tonight was in that display case. The most gut-wrenching part was discovering that Alex was Alexander Vance, Sarah's husband. Sarah, who was sitting right across from me, offering me looks of synthetic pity while her husband was sleeping with my wife. The deception was a tangled, venomous web, and I was trapped in the center. But the PI's report contained another, unrelated discovery, my own. While going through old family documents for the divorce lawyer I had secretly retained, I found a letter from my grandparents' estate planner. My grandfather, a man I remembered as a quiet carpenter who loved to fish, had been a shrewd investor. He and my grandmother had lived frugally, but they had amassed a fortune that had been sitting in a trust, managed impeccably, growing exponentially, waiting for me. I was, for all intents and purposes, a multi-millionaire. I had never known. My parents, wanting me to build a life on my own merits, had kept it from me until I was settled. I stared at the bank statement, the string of zeros seeming to mock the life I'd been living. I could have bought this entire restaurant on a whim. I could have given Jessica the life she so desperately craved. But the revelation came too late. Or perhaps it came at exactly the right time. I saw with painful clarity that the woman I married was gone. The woman sitting across from me now would have loved my bank account, but she had stopped loving me long ago. So I kept my secret. It became my armor. Back at the dinner table, the main course arrived.
Pan-seared scallops for them, a modest chicken dish for me. Jessica watched the waiter place my plate down and smirked. See, even his dinner is sensible and boring. Chloe chimed in. You're too good for him, Jess. You are a thoroughbred and he's, well, a plow horse. That was it. The final straw. The casual cruelty that sealed her fate. I put down my fork and daubed my lips with my napkin. I looked directly at Jessica, my smile finally fading, replaced by a calm, level gaze. You're right, Jessica, I said, my voice cutting through their chatter. My salary can't buy a lot of things. It can't buy bracelets like the one you're wearing. She instinctively touched it. I told you I bought this for myself. No, you didn't, I said softly. Alex Van bought it for you. At Cartier on Rodeo Drive, on the afternoon of October 14th. You paid with his Centurion card, the one he keeps for special purchases. Like you. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Chloe's fork clattered onto her plate. Megan's eyes were wide saucers. Jessica's face went white, the color draining from it as if a plug had been pulled. But I wasn't finished. I turned my gaze to Sarah. And Sarah, I'm so sorry. I know you thought Alex was in Zurich on business that week. He wasn't. He was at the Fairmont Miramar with my wife, room 712, Ocean View Suite. Sarah stared at me, her mouth opening and closing silently. A single tear traced a path through her perfect makeup. Jessica finally found her voice, a choked whisper. How do you know this? You called me clueless, remember? I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened a file. I didn't need to show it to them. I just set it on the table. I'm a history teacher, Jess. I believe in primary sources. I have photos, receipts, hotel folios. I have a recording of you and Alex planning your little getaway to Aspen next month, discussing how you were going to finally leave your pathetic, broke husband. Jessica was shaking, her bravado shattered, revealing the desperate, insecure woman underneath. Mark, please, not here. Here is the only place it could be, I replied, my voice devoid of heat, filled only with a profound sadness. You chose this audience to humiliate me. It's only fair they're here for the truth. I stood up, placing my napkin on the table. The weight on my shoulders was gone, replaced by an unfamiliar lightness. The divorce papers will be served to you tomorrow. My lawyer has been instructed to be thorough, especially concerning marital assets and infidelity clauses. Her face crumpled. But you have nothing. A teacher's pension? Our house has a second mortgage I didn't tell you about. You'll be ruined. It was a last desperate attack, an attempt to wound me one final time. And that's when I delivered the final blow. I allowed myself a small, genuine smile. That's the funny part, Jessica. You were so obsessed with balance sheets, yet you never once checked mine. You assumed my worth was my paycheck.
You thought my life was small because I enjoyed simple things. I paused, letting the words sink in. My grandparents were careful investors. Very careful. So don't worry about me being ruined. I think I'll manage. I looked around the table one last time, at Chloe's stunned face, at Sarah's quiet devastation, and at Jessica, who was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time, the dawning horror and greed warring in her eyes. She finally understood. She hadn't just cheated on a teacher. She had fumbled a winning lottery ticket and thrown it in the trash. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I walked out of the opulent restaurant and into the cool night air. For the first time in a year, I could breathe. The pain was still there, a dull ache where my heart used to be, but it was joined by something else: freedom. The next day, I started the process of liquidating some assets. My first major action wasn't to buy a sports car or a mansion. It was a phone call to my old school district, setting up the framework for the Thompson Grant, a multi-million-dollar fund to provide resources for underprivileged students and support for overworked teachers. I was still Mark, the history teacher, but now I was a history teacher who could change the future.